everyone. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. It is a beautiful day here in North Carolina. A little hot, but we had a little bit of rain over the weekend, so it cooled off a little bit. 2 weeks ago, on the other hand, was the hottest that it's been here in a long time. It felt like the sun was right on my forehead. I was out washing the car, I think, on Friday or maybe Thursday, and everything was fine, right? But as soon as I started vacuuming the inside, it just started dripping of sweat. It was just worst day. Unfortunately, that means it's tough to skate unless you go really early or really late. And my eyes are not great at skating at night. I don't know if you have a problem with skating at night. Skating isn't a problem, but it's when I'm doing aggressive and I'm trying to jump on a rail or jump on a ledge, and judging that height, really difficult for me to judge how close I am to it or how much I have to jump in the lights over top. Usually they have lights, so it's not that bad. But these young kids out there skating at night with their lights, it must be nice. It's been a long time since I've been able to skate at night. But everything is going good here. It's been a beautiful week. Getting things done at the warehouse. I've got a lot to cover tonight, so I'm really excited to get into it. Hope that you are doing well. I'm not going to go too long tonight. Hopefully will be a nice condensed video, but if you have any questions, obviously let me know. And yeah, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Gear Talk, episode 117. Gear Talk is the show where we break down the weird things about rollerblading, and we try to dial in your setup. We do this every other Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. Love doing the YouTube so that people can join in, ask me questions, correct me when I'm wrong. We get a nice lively little chat when people are asking questions. It's really nice to see the community get together. A lot of us, we grew up in communities where we had a bunch of skaters. At least some of us grew up, in the 90s, and we were able to skate with a bunch of people. Most of us nowadays, we have a couple people that we get to skate with, but a lot of us skate by ourselves. So things like this, things like Jump Street Livestream, things like events and competitions, great opportunities for us to get together and hang out with other people who are like-minded, who love rollerblading. I try to do this every other Wednesday. Sometimes it falls in the cracks. I do this as a passion. I love doing the videos, and I love talking about blading. I love rollerblading. But it is hard to find time between life. Life always gets in the way. But we do plan on doing this every other Wednesday, live on YouTube, 9 p.m. Eastern. Now, I do it at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's a little easier for the West Coast and the East Coast, mostly a US-based audience. If you are watching us in the UK, in Europe, it's hard to stay up late. I understand. I apologize. I wish there was a way that we could find a time that would work for everyone. But it is what it is, doing the best that we can with what we've got. That's the international world that we're living in. If you are watching this in the future, though, I always recommend, if you're watching this and you have questions, definitely leave a comment. I'm really good about answering questions if there's a question in the comments. If you're watching this live, you have the luxury of asking me a comment or asking me a question directly. So if anything is on your mind, or if you have a question about gear or about anything to do with rollerblading, love to answer your question. Just make sure that you tag Back to Blading on your question. It'll show up in orange. That way I'll be able to see the question, and I'll be able to answer your question in a timely manner. We usually break for questions about twice during the episode, so there's going to be plenty of time to ask your questions. And I don't deliberately skip any questions. Sometimes I miss some because YouTube chat misses things when it refreshes, but I try to get to as many questions as I can, and I stick around if there are more questions. So definitely a great opportunity to ask questions. I don't know everything, but I know a lot, and the things that I don't know, I'll try to point you in the right direction to find those answers. Super important that you have a place that you can ask questions. Before we get started, I always like to thank our friends over at thehelmetinitiative.org for our helmet giveaway. They are a great organization that tries to get more helmets on heads. It's important that we are wearing our helmet when we're going out skating. Want to take a little bit of insurance. If you fall down, you want to make sure that you don't have a huge accident, a huge injury. Usually, when we go out and skate, You don't fall down, you don't have to worry about it. But if you do fall down, hitting your head could be a really big deal. I've had plenty of friends end up with concussions. I've had plenty of friends, with serious brain injuries, comas, things like that, TBI. It is a thing. And it's something that I think as we get a little older, we should take a little bit more responsibility for ourselves. Now, I'm not your parent. I'm not your uncle. I'm not in charge of you. You do you. But I see way too many people out there falling and hitting their heads. I want to make sure that at least you have an opportunity to wear a helmet if you can. I would love nothing more than to give you a helmet. We do our helmet giveaway for every episode of Gear Talk. We give away a helmet, and that is thanks to our friends over at thehelmetinitiative.org. If you are watching this now, go to backtoblading.com/helmet. I will paste that in the chat. Backtoblading.com/helmet is the place to go if you've got a need for a helmet. Now, this is somebody who wants to wear a helmet, maybe can't afford it right now. Economy is doing pretty good here in the US, but I know that inflation is pretty high outside of the US. It is a difficult time for some of us, and I'm here to help if I can. We are able to give away a helmet for every episode of Gear Talk. Backtoblading.com/helmet if you want a chance to win a helmet. We get 20 or so applicants every time, so I pick somebody at random. I get in contact with them, and if they are living in the US, I get their size, I show what colors I've got in stock, and then I send them a helmet. If they're outside of the US, I send you some money so that you can buy yourself a helmet locally. Shipping and import taxes are very expensive. I don't want any money coming out of pocket. I want you to have this free helmet without having to spend any money at all. So we give you money so that you can go and buy a helmet wherever you live locally in your shop of choice. We're able to do that because we run ads on our YouTube videos. We also have supporters on Patreon. Patreon.com/backtoblading for more information. Put a few exclusives up there. We just did a live stream in the warehouse a couple weeks ago. Was it a week ago? That is only available up there. We do the podcast early up there, so you'll be able to listen to the podcast that we do a little bit early. But it's also a great place to help give back to the community. All of the proceeds that we get from the Patreon go back into the blading initiative that we are doing here with Gear Talk. So it helps fund shipping of helmets, and it helps fund the money that we give out to people every other Wednesday when we're able to do a giveaway. If they're not in the US, we send them money. So that is where the money comes from. Again, thank you all for supporting us on the Patreon. It is, a couple bucks a month. It isn't much, but it does help. It's one of those things that if you've got the money and you want to help out, we really appreciate it. And of course, thanks again to our friends over at the helmetinitiative.org for being a great organization, sending us some helmets so that we can give them away. I hope that we're able to continue that relationship for years to come. All right, before we get started, my current setup. I guess we kind of got started. Before we get into anything else, I always like to go over my current setup. How about that? This time I've actually been able to skate aggressive and big wheel. Now, with my aggressive setup, I am skating the standards. I'm still testing the standards. We have a few updates on the standards. I guess I can go into it now. So I am on the sample size. The sample size is a 44. It is 28.5 centimeter liner. The internal measurement is 29.5. You can tell because we've done some updates to our website, standardskate.co, and we've put all of our internal sizing measurements online for you to print out at home and see which shell size fits your foot best. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you were buying shoes, you would go into a shoe store and some attendant would sit you down and say, let's take a look at your foot. And you would take off your shoe. You would sit there with your sock. They would have a little thing that they would put your foot in, and they would slide this thing down and they would say, all right, your foot is a size 10 or whatever. And they would go to the back and they would find out a few shoes, and some of them would be a size 10, some of them would be a size 9.5, some would be a 10.5, depending on the brand. And they would say, okay, let's try these on and see which ones you like. And maybe you like the shoe, but you have to get a different size because it's a little short, or maybe it's too big and you have to get a smaller size. That is the standard way of buying shoes, and it sucks. So what we're trying to do is make skate sizing a little bit more elegant, a little bit easier to do in a post-shop world. There was a time when everybody was able to go down to their local skate shop and try on a pair of skates, and they would get the skates that they want. Now, skate shops are few and far between. There are a few dozen skate shops out there that you can go down to and actually try on skates. That is tough. You know, if you don't live, you know, within an hour, 2 hours of a skate shop, you don't have any luck. You're not going to be able to go down and try on these skates. So what do? Well, you go off of their sizing charts and you say, okay, well, I probably will fit, you know, my shoe is this size, and you buy the skates and you get them in, and maybe they're too big, maybe they're too small. And then you have to send them back. Most shops, you know, they have to cover the shipping, or you have to cover the shipping sending it back. It's just a whole ordeal. We're trying to do something about that. So instead, we are publishing our sizing charts. Now, usually when I'm recommending people are getting new skates, I ask them to measure their feet in centimeters. Not everybody does, but you really should. So what you should do is measure your feet in centimeters and then figure out how long your foot is, and then look at their sizing charts and see what the length is of each of the shells in Mondo, and then put your liner in and see how long it is. It's a whole process. What we've done, and you can go to Standard Skate Co., is we've printed out these beautiful, I guess, guides, sizing guides. So this you can download on the website. You can get it either as a legal printout, which fits all 4 shell breaks, or you can get it as, it's a PDF. So the first page is legal, and the second 2 pages you print on a normal A4 paper, or you print on letter paper, and then it's got these little scissor marks. You cut the scissors on the 2 pieces of paper, you put them together, and then you can figure out what size your foot should be in, what size skate your foot should be in. So you put this on the ground, and you line up your heel. You can see the little outline for the liner and the outline for the shell. You put your foot inside the liner, and you see how far up your toes go. And for me, it goes all the way up to the 295. So that means that my foot would be in the 295 shell. If your foot was smaller than that, maybe it would go in the 282 or the 271. Depends on what length your foot is. The nice thing about this chart is you can take a liner. Do I have a liner laying around? I do. Oh, I take these old Senate liners. So you can take the Senate liner, right? And you can say, I love these liners, and I want to ride these liners in my new standard boots. Well, how do I do that? How do I know what shell I should get? You take this and you put it on top. You line it to the back of the shell, and then you line it up, and you see, well, this one should fit a 29.5 shell, which is the size 10 liner, which is exactly the size that I should be riding, even though I won't be riding these liners because they really, really hurt your feet. But if you don't know your foot length and you want to reuse your liners, you can use this chart, put your liner on top, and figure out which shell you should get. We had a really great meetup over the weekend. We had an open house here at Balance Distribution, and I was able to have about 30 or so people roll through and try on the shells in person. So I do plan on having an open house more often. I plan on having a showroom area that you can come by and try on the shells. We had this shell. This was the 3D print. This is a 3D print of the 271, which is our size 40. And people were able to come by, bring your own liner, slide your liner in with a little shock absorber. We had a shock absorber in there because 10 millimeter shock absorber is going to make your foot a little bit longer. Sorry, this shell a little bit longer because you got a little bit of an angle. So you've put your foot in there with your liner and see which shell fits great. These are not actual shells. The actual shell molds are in production now, but you can see how very stiff and rigid the shells are. The actual shells won't be like that. But it was a really great time. We had about 30 people come by, which was great. We had a very large show up, which I wasn't expecting that many people, especially in a little area in North Carolina. But it was a lot of fun to have. I did have this out so that people knew what size their foot was. This is a thing that you would find at the shoe store. It has measurements in centimeters as well as in men's shoe size. Yeah, men's shoe size. So that's like the US shoes. Super handy to have one of these things, especially that it does measurements in centimeters. We will have all of this stuff available at the warehouse anytime you come by and visit. We do plan on having more open houses and more options for people to slip on by and try on the shelves. We have 4 shelves at launch, which is pretty incredible. I'm pretty impressed that we're able to pull that off, which should give you some good options for sizing. For me personally, I've been skating the skates. I was able to skate over the weekend. I skated on Saturday and I skated the live stream last week, trying to get into shape so that I can go and make some videos again. The actual final skates, the ones that I'm going to be actually showing off, should be here within the next week or so. They are adding the material, the textures to the mold. So if you've seen the skates on the live stream or anywhere else, you know, they're a little shiny. That is the way that they look as they come out of the mold, but before they've added the final textures. It's kind of like a plywood ramp before you've added the masonite. It works, it's for function, but it doesn't look so great. So now they're applying the texture, which should smooth everything out, make it look like a polished, finalized skate. Those should be here within the next week or so. So I'll be able to share those. And that is when we'll do the actual announcements. You'll be able to actually see the skates. I'll be making more videos showing off the skates and hopefully answering any questions of people during Gear Talk or who want to come by and check them out. Really excited about this project. You know, we are probably a month and a half away from having all of the shell sizes complete and ready for testing, which means that we're about a month and a half away from production, which means that we're probably about 2.5 months away from actually having skates shipping, which is crazy. I don't have the timing yet. You know, this is dealing with factories in China. Sometimes things take longer than they say that they will. It's just the nature of the business, you know, especially with our first production. There are definitely things that are going to go wrong. If it's a big thing, it might take a lot longer. If it's a small thing, you know, we roll with the punches and we make do. But it's hard to predict how long things are going to take. Fingers crossed that we have some good updates in the next couple of weeks. But I do know that those final size 44s that I'm going to be skating should be ready within the next week or so. They've told me that they're finishing up the liners now, and I cannot wait to share with everybody what we've been working on. They are such a great skate. I mean, for me personally, they fit me like a glove. And we had, you know, a couple dozen people actually try on the skates this weekend, try on the shells, and we didn't have any concerns. Everybody said that they fit as expected. Now, obviously, that's not skating them. You know, when you skate, it feels a little bit different, but there were no huge red flags, which to me is, you know, a huge deal, especially dealing with tight toe boxes and tight widths and weird lengths. We had none of that. People were able to find a shell that worked great for them. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to have a shell for everybody out there who's interested. Stay tuned. Next couple of weeks, I should have another update. I will probably, for the next Gear Talk, I'll probably be doing the introduction to the skate. So it might be a couple of weeks until I do Gear Talk again, but I promise it will be worth the wait. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions that I can answer. I'm trying to write up my script of things. I don't do a lot of script. This is all unscripted. I try to do as little scripting as possible, but I want to make sure that I'm ready because I know there's going to be a lot of questions. So if you have any questions, definitely give them to me tonight, or you know, send me a message and I'll get back to you and I'll add it to my list so that I make sure I cover it in the big reveal. But that's not all. I was able to skate big wheels. I didn't skate much. It's been raining a little bit here and it's been really hot. But today I was able to skate my big wheels, the FR-FR1s. And here they are. So these are the FR-FR1s. I've talked about these in the past. They are a plastic shell boot from FR. Probably their most popular, maybe their best selling shell. It is a 165 mount, it has a ratchet buckle in the middle, it has a plastic buckle up top. I've swapped in the Intuition liners from my FRUFRs because I think they're better for this shell, but honestly this shell is a little big for me. I did get the 44, it should be the right size, but these shells are very stiff and they have very little flex to them around the lacing area. This lacing area is very wide. You can see how wide, it's almost like old school throne vibes, but without the puffy tongue. And when you lace it down, I expect this area to kind of cinch in and hug my foot. Does none of that. This is just extremely solid, doesn't move at all. So when I'm skating, I get a little bit of heel lift inside the liner because I can't crank it down hard enough. I've cranked this ratchet buckle down as hard as I can. It won't go any farther, but I still have room in there. I'm still getting lift. Very frustrating situation. I heard a lot of great things about these FR1s too. So maybe it's just the liner. Maybe I need to swap out the liner. Problem is these cuffs are fairly tall. I don't know that I have a liner that is tall enough for these cuffs. Trying to get a liner that's not going to give me any issues with the cuff rubbing on the top of my ankle. It's going to be a difficult problem to solve, but I will look into it. I do like that they are light. They feel really fast and responsive when I get a good groove going. But when I'm just normally skating, I just feel like my foot is slopping around a lot inside that shell. Unfortunate, because I do really like the look of these skates, except for that lacing area. Aside from that, it's a nice clean look. Very popular, so I know that I'm not alone in thinking that they're a great skate. They are a 165 mount, which was really interesting because I was able to get myself a pair of the Endless frames. These are the Endless 90s, and full disclosure, I've been talking a little bit with Brad over at Endless, and he sent me these just to play around with. He watches the show and he's been following my stuff for a while. And just wanted me to get a pair of frames to try out. I haven't done much with 165 mount frames. I've done a little bit with Trinity, and I wanted to try them out, but I never really had the means to try them out. You know, they are a $200 frame, which is a little bit for somebody who doesn't skate a lot of big wheels very often. But I am glad that I was able to skate them. They're a really fun setup. So for me, you know, I have a 44 28.5 centimeter foot. Most of the time when I see a 110, 3x110 setup, the wheelbase is short. So either it's 243 or it's like around 255 or maybe 260. This is the Endless 90. So it's designed to ride 4x90 as well as 3x110. What that means is you can ride either a big wheel with a 110 or a slightly smaller 90 and still use the same frame. But because 4x90 requires a minimum of 272, 273 millimeter wheelbase in order to get clearance for all of those 90 millimeter wheels, you get a really nice long 110 millimeter ride. So I've got 3x110 millimeters and they're around 273 wheelbase from 1 to 3. That is a really great balance, especially for somebody like me who has fairly, I wouldn't say big feet, but I've skated smaller frames in the past and I don't like the feeling of slipping out or falling because I feel like I'm, you know, like a elephant on a ball at the circus, you know, and the wheelbase is so short. I love a long wheelbase, especially when I'm skating distance and I just want to cruise and maybe lean back on my heels a little bit. And this length really does it for me. My biggest gripe was that with this mixed height, mixed configuration base, that if you were riding 4x90s, then, you know, you would lose 10 millimeters of ride height. There's nothing worse to me than feeling like you're really tall, skating these really tall frames. It just feels like you're in high heels, and that's not fun for anybody. And it is true. So if you were skating a 3x110 and then you put in 4x90s, you would have a 90 millimeter wheel instead of a 110. So I have a 90 millimeter wheel here and a 110. And you can see they are smaller. So if this is using the same axle, assume that my finger is the axle, right? If they were using the same axle, this 90 millimeter is definitely going to have more room above it than the 110. That means that the ride height is going to be not as low as the 110 would be, because the 110 is a little bit bigger, but it's using the same axle holes. And I told Brad that, and he said, well, that's true, but it's not true. And there is a weird situation with the 165 mount that I don't find with UFS. With UFS, because the mounting is completely flat underneath, a 90 millimeter wheel, you make the hole 45 millimeters from the base of the frame, and maybe add a millimeter for tolerance, so 46 millimeters. And then you have the lowest ride height that you can get. You know, if you've got a sole plate and you just go the base of the sole plate and you bring the wheels directly to the base of the sole plate, that's a low ride height, right? So in that situation, if you were riding 3x110s, but then you said 4x90, you would be 10 millimeters taller. It is still the case that you are 10 millimeters taller if you're riding 4x90, then potentially you could be, but because of the way 165 mount works, we're able to get lower with these wheels with a 110 than realistically you could with a 4x90. So if you made the lowest 4x90 frame possible, it would still be taller than a 3x110 in regards to ride height. These wheels can dip down because of this mounting area in the back and this mounting area in the front. That's where the wheels would need to go. So there's no way that you can make a low 4x90 frame. The lowest 4x90 frame on a 165 mount is still going to be taller than this setup. And the reason is 165 is just the way that it is, and it allows for these 3-wheel setups to go lower because it's basically dipping underneath the sole plate if you were skating a UFS frame. And that changed my perspective on things. Now, it doesn't mean that this is a great frame for 4x90. It's the best frame that you can get for 4x90, but 165 mounts probably aren't great for 4x90 to begin with. If you compare them to Trinity, so I have a Trinity skate here. So these are the, what were these called? The Fusion, I think. So these are the Fusion 4x90s. And as you see with a Trinity skate, the 90 millimeter wheels, because the mount of Trinity is outside here, you can see the bolts in the front or on the left and the right of the wheels. You've got the wheel that goes up and inside, making it a super low ride height. This is the way if you were trying to skate a 4x80, 4x90, 4x100, using a Trinity mount is probably the way to go. If you're doing a 3x110, 3x125, then 165 is probably just as good. That's getting into big wheel talk, but I felt like it was important because I made that mistake in assuming that a 4x90 would be much taller, and while it is, it kind of isn't. And it was a really interesting discussion that I had with Brad. So again, appreciate it. Thank you for sending these frames. I am going to continue skating them. Again, full disclosure, I did not pay for these frames. So far, so good. I've only skated for about 30 minutes on them, but I do plan on skating them for a little bit longer. It is a great length for me. Finding something that's 273 or so for a 3x110 is a very difficult find. Not something that you can usually just pick up or find stock. So this is a really great upgrade for me. I do plan on trying them with a 4x90 setup to see how it feels. But in saying that, I do think that the optimal setup for a 4x90 is probably just skating with a Trinity mount frame. It just makes more sense. You can dip down into the frame area a little bit more. And yeah, the sizing is just, it's rough. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I got the wrong shells. I don't know how many shells they have. I got the shell for the 44, so it's not like I said, oh, give me the biggest shell you got. I got the right shell, at least I thought I did. But I am skating a thinner liner, so maybe I'll just try a liner that's a little thicker. The stock liners were just not great, so I'm not going to go back to those stock liners, but we'll see if I can find a different liner. Maybe a crown liner or something like that would work. What else do I got? I think that's everything. So a little bit of housekeeping mixed in with my current setup. It was a nice little weekend. Glad that I got to see everybody. Glad that I'm able to go out there and skate again. If you have any questions before we get started on our main event, I would love to answer your questions. Anything to do with rollerblading is fair game. Make sure that you tag Back to Blading if you're watching live. Just put a question in the chat, tag Back to Blading so that I can see it. If you are watching this in the future, make sure that you leave a comment in the video. I would love to answer your questions there. I try to answer as many questions as I can, and I would love to answer any weird questions that you might have. The stuff that we do is a little difficult to Google sometimes, and I don't know if you've tried using ChatGPT, but probably isn't the best resource for asking about skate stuff. I mean, you do you, but if you end up putting, you know, some weird stuff on your bearings thinking that you can clean them, it's probably not a good idea. But definitely I'm here to help out if you have those funky questions you can't find an answer to. I'm going to drink a little bit of water and then scroll up and I'll talk a little bit to your questions. All right, let's get started with some questions. Sean Michelson, funny how things have come full circle. Kato is in a van smiling and nodding to Law 25 years in the future. Absolutely. So Kato, hilariously, would do... Oops, did I kick the camera? I think I did. There we go. Hello. Kato, hilariously, when he was building the remedies, would have people fax him a outline of their feet. And that's a thing. Now, I'll say that when I was getting my adapts, what Peter would do is he would get an insole that I knew this length of or whatever, measure the insole and take a picture of it, and then I would step on the insole and take a picture of it. And that way he could tell how far the insole was in relation to my toes and see the difference. That was super interesting. So a very difficult process, a lot of back and forth and a lot of heavy lifting, but when you're doing a handmade skate, like what Kato was doing, making sure that the skates fit people's feet perfectly, or like what Peter's doing, where he's able to nudge out the skates a little bit and do half sizes and slightly wider feet for slightly wider people. It's an amazing time. I mean, a lot of work. People say that, oh, the adapts are so expensive. They are expensive, but the amount of work that goes into making them and the whole, you know, start to finish service that you go through to get the skates made the way that you want them, definitely worth the money. We're trying to do something a little similar with Standard. I don't think we'll have a situation where we'll have people send me pictures of feet, although I have been getting a lot of people's pictures of people's feet. I never asked for people's feet, just to be clear. I'm not really interested in that. But I am glad to see that people are understanding how the printout works, how the guide works, and I do hope that it is helpful. I can confirm that people have tried the guides on here at the warehouse, and then they put the shells on and they're like, perfect, this works. So I think that we're on to something. There will be multiple refinements of the guide while we figure things out and make them a little bit more easy to understand. I do have to remind everybody that the guides are just a guide. It is not the end-all be-all. So if you feel like they fit perfectly on the guide and you get the skates and they don't fit, I am sorry. Your foot is a three-dimensional object. The guide is a two-dimensional printout. So especially on the outsides where your feet kind of go like this, because that's the way that feet go, that is really difficult to express on a two-dimensional line drawing. I'm doing my best. I hope that it is an illustration that helps you decide and figure out what shells you don't need, but it's going to be really difficult for us to get you the perfect shell. Ultimately, feet are just so weird, and there's so many different liners out there. We're doing our best, but I feel like it is the spiritual successor to what Kato was doing. I think, Sean, you're absolutely right. I think Peter's definitely onto something on a high end. We're trying to do something a little bit more mass market that everybody can do. And, I think the more that we can get people into the proper fitting skates, the more people are going to enjoy skating. There's nothing worse than going to a skate park or going to a skating event and seeing somebody with skates that are just obviously the wrong size, or they haven't buckled them. And then, I mean, you've seen it. The like their edges are just like that, and they're just like walking around. It's like, yo, like buckle up your skates, tie your laces. Like you tie your shoes, right? You should tie your laces. It's just the worst feeling. And then those people are just going to quit because they don't enjoy it. Where if they just had a proper fitting, maybe they would really, thrive. But we're doing our best. Thanks again for the support, Sean. All right, Anton, I got questions about stocking products in China. Would love to chat. I don't know if I've spoken with you, but I had a customer or a shop in China who was interested. Best way to do that is go to balancedisc.com. There is a button at the bottom of the page that has dealer inquiry, I think is what we called the link. If you click on that link, there should be a form that lets you fill out the information. We love talking with new shops. We're very particular about shops that we sell to. We don't want to cover every single shop in the world, but if you are a shop that gets it, that wants to support, then we would love nothing more than to chat and see if there's a good fit there. Look forward to hearing from you. If you don't hear anything, obviously you can always ping me back to Blading and I'll make sure that I reach out. But that's the best way to get through to it. That way we have your email and your contact information. We'll add you to our list so that whenever we have new products, we will send them out so that you know what you can get. And we can have a good shop brand relationship. Always looking forward to that. And thanks for watching. David Quist, is 65 millimeter too big for antis, or for anti with 45 millimeter anti-rockers? Should I get bigger antis or just try 60 millimeter with 45 millimeter and again for anti? Typically an anti-rocker wheel is between 45 and 47 millimeters. I think that came because it's about 2 inches, and that is, the size of the material. So I don't think there's an arbitrary, there's an actual best size for an anti-rocker wheel. I do agree that the bigger the wheel, the bigger the anti-rocker wheel. And if you have a big groove, it would be kind of good to have a big anti-rocker wheel, I think. But it really all depends on what the groove is like. For you, definitely if you're riding 60 millimeter wheels anti, I have no issues with somebody riding 47s. That's what we sell, and that's what I would ride if I were skating anti-rocker, is 60 millimeters with 47 millimeter anti-rocker wheels. 47 down to 45, I wouldn't have a problem with. 44 might be a little small. You don't really get that anti-rocker wheel doing anything unless your groove is a little bit tighter. The exception is if you're skating, 58 millimeter wheels, 56 millimeter wheels, then a smaller anti-rocker wheel would make sense. Hope that helps. Anti-rocker wheels aren't really there aren't that many options out there, unfortunately. I know Kaiser is making 3 different sizes of their grind wheels. I don't know that they're available yet, but I'd be really interested to see what people think of those. And then, obviously we make UHMW grind wheels. We don't make the Chroma anti-rocker wheels anymore, but they were 46 millimeter. There are a few others out there. Dead makes an anti-rocker wheel and Red Eye makes an anti-rocker wheel. It's pretty easy to get some. They're all probably around 46 millimeters or so. Good luck. Michael Bakos, are USD Sway compatible with ground control 125s? They absolutely are. So USD Sway, do I have sways here? I don't think I have sways. I get mailed my sways off. Oh, I do. I have my farmer sways. So the USD Sway is a UFS boot. UFS boot means that the bottom of the boot is completely flat, and there are 2 holes, 167 millimeters apart from hole 1 to hole 2. It is a M6 bolt. It is a 3 millimeter tall nub with 20 millimeters in diameter. So the bottom of a sole plate. Do I have a sole plate? I should have a sole plate. It's in my Seba. Oh, I threw it on the floor. I threw my sole plate on the floor. Let me get it. Oh, I cannot get it. There it is. Bottom of sole plate. This is UFS. Completely flat channel, 41 millimeters from one wall to the other. 2 nubs, 3 millimeters tall, 20 millimeters apart in diameter, or in diameter. Yeah. Shouldn't doubt myself. And then an M6 bolt. Any ground control frame is UFS. I don't think they've made a non-UFS frame. So any ground control frame that you find will fit on your USD sways. That goes from the Featherlight 3s all the way up to the metal 125s. That's the beauty of UFS. So you can put any of those frames on any UFS compatible boot, including your sways. Now, should you? That is the question. I would not recommend riding 125 millimeter wheels on an aggressive boot. I think that is way too tall. I think you need more structural support. Now, a 45-degree strap, like what these farmers have, this Velcro 45-degree strap, it's gonna help. It's gonna give you a little bit more support, but it's not enough. I think if you're riding 125 millimeter wheels, you need, like these FR1s, you need this ratchet buckle. What a ratchet buckle does is it is a 45-degree strap. So I'll click it in a little bit there. So you click it in, and then you lift it up, and you can hear it. It goes ratcheting. You can see the boot. As I click it up, you can see the boot squish in. And get tighter and tighter until these FRs run out of teeth. That means that your foot, when it's back in the heel of the boot, this ratchet buckle is going to continue to get tighter and pull your foot back, giving it more support inside the boot. When you've got really tall wheels, 100 millimeter, 125 millimeter, 110 millimeter, you're going to feel like you're kind of on high heels. And if you were walking in high heels and you trip a little bit, you could really damage your ankle if this boot isn't holding you nice and supported. So I wouldn't recommend skating them on sways. I think anything bigger than 90 millimeters, can't fit this on the hook. Anything bigger than 90 millimeters is a mistake. I think you're going to really hate the experience. If all you want to do is just kind of cruise around, absolutely fine. But it's probably, if you want to get some really big wheels and go far, you're probably going to want to get a dedicated setup. I don't know how much those ground control frames are. I would assume they're like $100. With 3 125 millimeter wheels, you're probably looking at $150, $160. I don't know how much those wheels are. Say $200 or so. You can get a pair of skates that is 125 millimeter dedicated tri-skate big wheel setup for a little less than $250, and they'll be a quality setup. I think that's the way to go if you're looking for a 125 millimeter setup. If all you want to do is keep your sways and skate some big wheels, there are plenty of other options. You know, we make frames at Compass that do 4x80, and the beauty of that is you can pull the frames off. I actually have a pair here. Compass frames, you can actually pull the frames off. It uses UFS as well. And in the bottom of the frame, you can access the access the frame bolts without taking the wheels off. So all you do is you pop the old frames off and you put these frames on and you tighten the frame bolts, and then you can go out there and skate. We make them in 72 millimeter and 80 millimeters, so 2 different options depending on how far you want to skate, how fast you want to go. There are also 90 millimeter frames. You can get them from Kaiser, you can get them from a few different skate companies. I think that would probably be my recommendation if all you want to do is skate around your neighborhood, skate a little faster. Definitely worth doing, and I think a really good little upgrade without buying a dedicated skate. But if you want to skate far, if you want to skate miles, you're really going to want something big, 110 millimeter at the minimum, and that really begs for something that's a more dedicated big wheel skate. I hope that answered your question. Probably more information than you needed, but I don't want anybody hurting their ankles. Sways are great. They do have a lot of forward flex, and I wouldn't want anybody to jack themselves up on 125 with that setup. But it is great that you're out there skating and thinking about skating big wheels, because as we get older, as our knees start to fall apart, aggressive becomes more and more difficult to do more regularly. I skate aggressive probably once a week now because my body needs a few days to recover. I used to be able to skate twice a week. I think I can get back into shape where I'm able to skate twice a week. That's my goal. But if I were just skating big wheels, I could skate every day. I have no question about it. And skating is skating, There's nothing better than jumping on a really fast soul grind, but it's also a really amazing feeling just bombing down a hill or, skating down some stairs or just cruising around. Anyway, great question. Thank you so much. Michael Backhouse again. Oh, are USD suede boots and ground control 80mm a good match? Yes, as I just said, I think the 80mm is probably the recommended size. Ground control 80s, Compass 80s, Kaiser 80s, whatever 80mm frame you can get, that would probably be my recommendation for the suedes. I think that would be a lot of fun for you. Endless, hey, great to see you. The FR1 will generally allow you to drop one shell size if you have an intuition liner. Yeah, that's something that I wish that they would have they would have told me before I purchased them. It's an interesting skate company. Everybody that I've talked to says, yeah, you should drop a shell size. And for me, trying to make a skate company, having to navigate that is a difficult problem. I don't want to tell people, yeah, you should just drop a shell size. You should just know what shell size is which. And that's what we're trying to do with this printout guide and posting our internal measurements so that you can see, well, the numbers don't lie. The only thing solid is the shell. If I had known that the shell was going to be so freaking long, I probably wouldn't have gotten them. And I'll add that is the same shell as my UFRs. My UFRs came with the Intuitions. So I am skating the UFR Intuitions in the FR1s. Same shell, and it's still just way too big. So sucks, but that's the way it is. I'm going to find a better liner. I think that's the way to go. And I do think I have these crowns. Where are they? I mean, I could use the farmer crowns, but I have the red crowns. I think that will probably work well. It just needs a little bit more padding in there to keep my foot from rising up. Austin Paz. Hey, Austin. Thanks for doing 50/50 giveaway with us on Jump Street. We'll be announcing the winner on our show tomorrow. Excellent. Well, I can't wait to tune into that. If anybody was not aware, we were thrilled to work with Scott Crawford on a giveaway with Jump Street. Billy and Austin were happy to help get the word out. We're going to be giving away a ready to roll setup, one of Scott's frames with a pair of Scott's frames with his 50/50 wheels, compass bearings, t-shirt, laces, and the custom box. So it's going to be a really great setup for somebody out there. I love Scott. I think he's just an amazing guy. The amount of work that he's done to keep the sport alive and to keep him alive by going and skating. I mean, he is the epitome of what a retired pro should be. They still skate at an incredible level. They go out there and they have a great time. Maybe they get hurt more often. Maybe their body doesn't hold up as well as it used to. But they still just look amazing. It's that timeless style that he has. And he's one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. So for him to be able to work with us on this frame was, really a dream come true. And again, we're thrilled to be able to give one away and work with Jump Street on that giveaway. So thanks for the opportunity. Glad you were able to make it happen with us. And I can't wait to get a hold of the winner so that I can send them some product. It's going to be cool. Chris Wedding, I've been meaning to get some dedicated big wheel skates. I always get pressure points on outside of my foot near toes. Any good options? So hard to pick skates without trying them on. It absolutely is. If you're looking for a big toe box, that's a hard one for me to answer. I'm not super experienced with the big wheel boots. I've heard good things about the FRs were fine. Again, I'm having some issues with the sizing. There's definitely room in the toe box. My feet are swimming a little bit in there, so make sure that you downsize maybe one size if you're riding Intuitions. But, on a positive, my toes have no issues. I love having a little bit of wiggle in the toe box. For me, a toe box, there's so many tight toe boxes out there that, it cramps your foot or you get the little blister above your knuckles. Nothing better than a nice open toe box so you can wiggle your feet. So for me personally, if you're looking for something with a little bit more space, the FR1 is a way to go. Like I said, though, I'd probably downsize by one size if you can, if you're riding Intuitions. Touch Fisher PMB, maybe get a tech guy to make a foot scanner app. I would love to do that. And, I have a lot of experience. That's what I do. I used to do iPhone apps. So I would love to do that. It's amount of time and amount of money. And then ultimately, I don't know that it would be able to solve the problem. If we knew exactly what our liners were internal volume and we were able to publish that, then that would be cool. I think a lot of people are going to bring their own liners, and that's absolutely fine. We're not going to be selling with Intuitions. They're going to be great stock liners, but I don't think a $200 stock liner that comes on a skate is our market yet. Maybe someday it will be, but at the beginning I want to keep this price point down. So as a result, I think a lot of people are going to bring their own. We also have a fairly padded liner, which gives a lot of variance, a lot of squish. It's heat moldable, so you'll be able to heat mold it and get a much tighter fit, much more custom fit. But yeah, feet are weird. I do know that there are some shoe stores that have 3D scanners that can figure out your length and your width and everything. I don't know if they're a gimmick or if what, Ultimately, what you need something like this. Everybody needs one of these at home. You put your heel in the back, you slide the thing down, and you say, oh, I am a size 44. That's all you need. If you had that, and then our job as boot companies is to make sure that the 44 is to size and that the width is accommodating for people and it's not too wide. Those are the two things that I think we need to really focus on. And I think we've nailed it. But yeah, I'd love to throw more technology at it. That's kind of what I love to do. We'll get there. More money means more fun opportunities to make cool tech. So I hope that we can get there. But yeah, great idea. Anton Wheeling, yeah, that was me you spoke to a few months ago. Great. Thank you. I've got your name and information. Definitely we'll be in touch as soon as we got more. We have actually some new products coming out next week, 2 weeks, end of this month. So you'll get an email from that when those come out. But again, if ever you have a question, feel free to reach out. You've got my email address. So get in contact. Love to talk to you. Casey Markle, I just got the new SL sole plates. Oh, I was interested on those. They were so hard to put on, I thought they were going the wrong ones at first. Have you heard anyone mention this? Yes, I have. Let's talk about SLs, since you bring it up. So SLs were a very technically advanced skate for the time. One thing that Razors and Andy Wegner at Razors do, they're really smart about skate technology. He's got so many patents. He comes up with these crazy ideas, and he works with a great team of skaters that help him with ideas from time to time, of course. But Razors has a lot of patents. They come up with some really cool ideas. And one of the things that I love about the SLs is it's a completely different system than anything else out there. The base mounts to the boot. The boot has this little mounting area underneath. And then these wings mount in the front and the back. And then this middle one mounts with the two holes in the middle, with the frame mounting directly to that sole plate that goes directly into the boot. Really smart idea. And it has an internal shock absorber. Who doesn't love an internal shock absorber? Really crazy idea. I absolutely love it. The problem is that when you have a multi-level mounting area and you try to have a single mounting plate that goes on top of it, you're going to get some variance, Things are not going to always line up perfectly. If you look at this side, the negative side, you can see the negative has 4 bolts. I guarantee if they made a sole plate that was like that, and it used those 4 bolts, it would be absolutely perfect. But because this side has 2 bolts, 2 bolts, 2 bolts, and it's at different levels with different materials, over time, and maybe even straight out of the box, it is really difficult to have a consistent mounting pattern. So I love that they came out with a new sole plate. I think it's the right thing to do. I wish that it were easier to mount. I've heard from a couple of people that it is difficult to get on there. I don't know that there's a better way to do it. I mean, again, they're pretty smart guys. They probably would have figured it out. If there were a better way to get a sole plate on there, a one-piece sole plate on there. I don't know what to tell you. I'm glad that you were able to get it on. If you have any problems, definitely reach out to Sunshine. If you're in the US, ooh, what's that? Oh, this is my cable. Definitely reach out to Sunshine if you're in the US or the distributor in Europe. They would love to help you out with this. I think they love seeing people try their stuff, and they need that feedback. You know, if there's something that they can do with the mold or something that they can do to make the instructions better so that people know how to put them on, I think they would appreciate it. And let me know after you skate them if they make any difference. I don't have a lot of memory of skating that sole plate. I didn't have any negative or positive about it. I do remember that the Royale felt super low, meaning that I felt like I was Royaling on my foot. Like there was no like separation, which is a really weird feeling. It works, but yeah, it was a very, very weird feeling. I'm wondering if the sole plate changes that or makes it any different. But definitely report back. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you? Marts, if you're still able to talk about the standard skate, I have to ask about how tall the toe box will be. I tend to have the pressure with some skates such as Aeons and Razor Shifts. Yeah, I could talk a little bit about it. We made sure that the toe box was generous. So if you look at any of our emails with the factory after having 3D prints to test, it was always, can you add 2 millimeters here? Can you add 2 millimeters here? And it was opening things up. One of the areas that we focused on most was, you know, if you look at the power slide next, this thing is a nightmare. If you look at the power slide next, one of the areas that we focused on that was a pet peeve of mine, because I've heard from so many skaters who struggle with this area. Actually, these liners would probably work. I might put these liners in my FRs. Give that a shot. Is this area right here. It's kind of hard to see because it's dark, but this area above the lacing, that area digs into so many people, and we made sure that they opened them up so they are nice and wide. And the reason why we were able to get away with making them nice and wide is we've got a fairly thin lacing area that will suck your foot in. So if you've seen, I think I posted a video on a reel on the Back to Blading channel, or on the Instagram. When you tie your skates up, it pulls the laces in. It does what you would hope the laces would do, is it pulls the shell in around the lacing area and kind of hugs your foot. It is a great feeling. Making sure that and the only way we can do that is if we made sure that there was more space for the laces to come in, because some feet are going to just be bigger and they won't need as much of a hug. Toe box, exactly the same thing, making it a little bit taller because some people are going to fill out that toe box more than others. Aeons definitely have a tight toe box. We made sure that it was taller than that. When I can show you the skates, I'll explain and I'll demonstrate a little bit more. But yeah, know that we've done a lot to make sure that the toe box is big, that we've given a little bit of extra room around the heel, because the heel area is something that I always struggle with. And then definitely that lacing area, made sure that that was taller so that it wouldn't pinch. Sweated the details. Again, don't know if that's going to translate to a great skate experience for everyone, but I can say that a lot of people out there are going to like it. Wiki. Hello, question about bearings. Bought some Flying Eagle ceramics and used a Tempish oil on them today. Noticed that they got slower. Should I use a thinner oil? Which one? That is a great question. I've never used a Tempish oil on them. I've used bearing oil, and I use the ones from Boss, I think it's called, speed bearings. I think all that it is really is sewing machine oil. I don't think it's any special oil, but I would probably remove that oil if you feel like it's giving a negative performance. Remove the oil, use some isopropyl alcohol, get rid of the oil or whatever could be on the bearings, and then put a new oil on there. I'm not sure what Flying Eagle would recommend. So I've never skated ceramics, so it might be a different oil that works with that versus a stainless ball, which is the the style of bearings that most bearings, most high-end bearings come from. Ceramics is in a different world altogether. That again, I've never experienced them, but that's what I would probably do. I would also see if skateboarders make ceramic bearings as well. See if there's a skateboard. It's funny because skateboards, I wouldn't think that skateboards would care about bearings like we do. But there are vert skaters that want to go really fast. So there are probably some ceramic lovers out there, skateboard ceramic people. See if there's any recommendation from skateboarders of what oils to put on for a ceramic bearing as well. Speed skating for inline, and then skateboarding, see if there's any other opinions out there. But for me, I would probably just use the Boss speed oil, whatever it's called. I don't think it would make it any slower, but again, I'm no expert at oils with bearings, unfortunately. I wish you luck. Sean Michelson, I know you already says it won't be a memory buckle, but is a buckle going to be a standard buckle or a standard buckle? It is not a custom buckle. We couldn't afford a custom buckle yet, but I do have dreams of making a custom buckle. I will share more about the buckles when I can share more, but definitely we've considered the buckles. It's not just any old buckle. There's a purpose behind the buckle, and we made sure that the buckles were going to be very consistent. There's nothing worse than a rattly buckle or a buckle that breaks off in a few sessions, and I think we've solved that problem. March, would you consider exploring more wizardish styled frames like you had on your videos a few years ago with the NR 100s? Try them with the Seba CJ2 Prime with an Intuition. I would love to skate more wizardy stuff. It's just a matter of time. I don't get to skate very often, and when I do, I want to skate aggressive. I ultimately am an aggressive skater. I grew up as a hockey player. If I have a stick in my hands, I love being on the ice. If I don't, I love skating ledges, or transition. For me, just skating is not as much fun. It's more exercise, and it's less lifestyle. It's less, what I do. In saying that, I do love the idea of wizard skating. I have a hard time making it look good, but I feel like I have pretty good edge control after, growing up as a hockey player. I feel like I could be pretty good at the wizardy stuff, and it would come pretty quickly if I gave it a little bit of time. So it is on my list of things to do. As soon as it gets a little bit cooler here, I'll be able to do that. It's hard to do wizard skating in a confined area. You need a little bit more space. And our warehouse is great for skating mini and skating the box, but it's not so good for skating wizard stuff. But in the future, I definitely will. I think it would be a lot of fun. All right, Endless, what's your foot measurement? I am 28.5 centimeters, 44 typically, 10 and a half foot. So that is my foot measurement. My left foot, I think, is 28.2. My right foot is 28.5. And I'm a fairly regular size D width. So nothing funky, no weird arches or anything like that. I'm as normal as it comes when it comes to skates. I can fit in a Majestic 12. I can fit in an Aeon. Absolutely no problems. But finding the right skate with the right shell that fits perfectly has always been a struggle until I ended up making my own. And now I know what it feels like to have a really good fitting shell. So kind of spoiled myself. I don't recommend everybody makes their own boots. I think it's very expensive if you're not planning on starting a skate company, but definitely isn't bad. I'll say that the Adapts were the closest that I ever got. The only issue with the Adapts was that the carbon, it just really fatigued my foot a little bit. It happens, but I feel like that was the best fitting skate that I ever had. And full respect to Peter for sweating the details and getting that sizing dialed in. He knows what he's doing, so definitely appreciate it. Wiki again, MyFit Second Skin Pro, Intuition Premium, MyFit Prime, Rosie's RL2. Which would you choose? I have some Icons AG20. Best wishes also in my 30s. Knees go boom fast. Yes, knees are the worst. For that boot, I've never tried the MyFit Prime except for the MyFit Prime that came on the Tim Franken Gods, which wasn't technically the MyFit Prime, even though it said that it was the MyFit Prime. Don't get me started. Second skins or Intuition Premiums, I think you got to go with either one of the two of those. I love my Rosie's RL1s. The RL2 I feel like is a little overpriced. Again, the RL1 was a little overpriced. Yeah, I would go with the Intuition Premiums, especially if you're doing an AG20, which is a pretty high-end boot. I think you spend money and get the Intuition Premiums. That's the way that I would go. Make sure that you have really good shock absorbers. You don't want to hurt your knees any more than you already are. Kyle Galt, hey Law, hope all is well. Was wondering if you sell prime frame hardware. Loving the Sasha Lopez frame still. Thanks. We do. So if you go to the website, fittyfittyframes.com or balancedisc.com/fittyfitty maybe, we have all of the core axles there. We also sell them through shops. So if you need to go to a shop, you can always get hardware from a shop. They'll have core axles. And if they don't have them in stock, we drop ship. So if you have a shop that you want to support, would love to support your shop. Just make sure that they get in contact with us. You buy through them and then we ship direct out if they don't have it in stock, so you don't have to wait any longer. We have 3 colors. We have black, silver, and gold. The gold on those Sashas is very nice. Chris Pauly, and then I'm going to get to big wheel talk. Someone should break down all the bearings available, like Wicked 30 SKUs, big balls, 7 balls, 5 balls, different materials. Why? Yeah, I don't know. We have 2 bearings that we sell. Fitty Fitty bearings are greased, stainless, polished 7-ball bearings. Everything we do is 7-ball bearings. They are shielded on both sides to keep the grunk out. They are inexpensive bearings. They're designed for aggressive because we end up falling in dirt a lot. And we sell compass bearings, which are serviceable. They're oil-based. They have a open side so that you can get in there and you can get isopropyl alcohol in there to clean them out. They're more expensive. They're a higher precision. They're faster. It just depends on what style skating you want to do. That's as far as I go. You know, I'm very much the in-and-out burger of bearings. Either you're skating aggressive, here's some bearings that'll keep dirt out, or you're skating big wheel, here's some bearings that you're going to go faster with. Anything more than that, it feels like I wouldn't know the difference. But, you know, I would love to be proven wrong. We did a bearings Pepsi challenge a while ago and could not tell the difference at all. So it was a very, it's a very telling story. All right, let's get started. So I am right at the beginning endless at the, talk about the FR1 shell sizing. We'll pick up there. But first, let's talk a little bit about big wheels. So as you all probably know, I'm mostly an aggressive skater. You know, I grew up as a hockey player. My transition to rollerblading was off-ice training. My brother and I were big into hockey. We played in Berkeley, California, and we wanted to find a way to skate away from the ice. And we bought rollerblades. My parents bought rollerblades. We were 12 and I think he was 10 at the time. So we weren't buying anything. But my parents bought us rollerblades and we were out there every single day. We had a school down the street that both of us went to for middle school. It had a beautiful wall that we were able to shoot pucks against all day. And then eventually we would get nets and we would play roller hockey. And that was how we grew up. It was just skating, skating, skating all day, every day. And then we stumbled upon aggressive. You know, we saw people riding down stairs and jumping over stairs and doing wall rides and stuff. And we're like, what the hell is this? And then we learned how to grind, and then everything changed. You know, hockey was a thing of the past, and all we wanted to do was get that feeling of jumping on a soul grind or get that feeling of, you know, riding down stairs. those were still big wheel days. You know, we didn't actually transition over to aggressive skates, proper aggressive skates, until they were a thing. You know, this was before aggressive skates were a thing. And our skates back in the days were 70 millimeter wheels with riveted on frames, very similar to what you see now with the Impala skates. Those were basically what we were skating back in the days. Super inexpensive, bad construction, but for us, they were skates, and they were better than anything that we'd ever done before. So if you were just getting into skating and you have some cheap skates, you know, the $150 or so Amazon specials that you can't pronounce the name of, or some, you know, inexpensive rollerblader K2 skates, or the Impala skates, and you want to upgrade, there's a lot of options out there. Now, first thing to really talk about, and I don't want to get too deep into it in this conversation, but I will take it from two different vantage points. First is from a skater who's just coming from an inexpensive skate and wants to get into something a little bit more refined. Most important thing that you do is find a skate that fits your foot perfectly. And that's a lot more difficult to do nowadays that we don't have skate parks everywhere, or skate shops everywhere. But it's super important that you find a skate that fits you really well. The cheap skates that you've got might be causing you blisters. People might say, oh, they'll break in, stuff like that. Good skates really don't need a lot of break-in period. They have liners that are heat moldable. They have plastics that are high quality and will flex with your foot, but will support you when you need it. The thing that you're going through with blisters is not a thing that you should be experiencing. I don't get blisters, and I skate a ton of different skates. If I get a blister, that skate is a problem. And you'll find people who agree with that sentiment, that there is no excuse nowadays to have blisters in skates. You shouldn't expect a skate to take months to break in. You should be able to skate the skate fresh out of the box and have a good time. It will get better in time, just like a fine wine, but it's not going to be an abusive relationship from the beginning. And usually you're looking at around $200 for a skate like that, $200, $300 for a skate like that. You can go to any of the brands, they'll have a quality skate for around that price. But if you're looking for a skate, that's probably where you want to be. If all you're doing is skating up and down the street, $200, $300, probably where you want to budget yourself. A couple things to consider. First of all is the wheel size. If you are fairly competent on your skates, you can get a bigger wheel. Bigger wheels are really great for skating farther, longer distances, maybe higher speeds. The bigger the wheel, the more speed that you can get with that wheel, and the more you can charge up that wheel to coast further. It would be like if you were on a BMX bike versus a speed bike with a big wheels versus a tricycle. And you see the kid, you know, trying to catch up to somebody on a speed bike, and you got to pedal super fast because you have smaller wheels, versus a speed bike that has the big wheels and you're just pedaling and pedaling and it's just taking off. That is the difference. And typically when you're dealing with smaller wheels, you're around the 72 to 80 millimeter wheel. If you're doing a big wheel setup like a recreational skate, 72 to 80 millimeter is probably where you should start if you're just learning how to skate. You don't want something too tall. If you know what you're doing, 90 millimeter is a really great ride, especially if you have a larger foot. Anything around 10, a size 10 or a size 11, you're going to really appreciate the longer wheelbase of the 90 millimeter wheel. If you want to go bigger, you want to skate longer, that's where they drop the four, I can't even speak. That's where they drop the 4 wheels and they go down to 3 wheels. The reason why they have 3 wheels is because they can make a shorter wheelbase and you can still have a really big wheel with top speed. Let me show you what I mean. So we've got this Powerslide Fusion. This is a 4x90 millimeter setup. 4x90 millimeters. So we're talking about a 270 millimeter wheelbase. Each of these wheels is 90 millimeters. So you've got 90 plus 90 is 180 plus 45 and 45. It's around 270 plus a little millimeter inside so that they don't rub with each other. So you're looking at 273 millimeters. And for a size 10 boot, it looks pretty good. You've got the base of the heel lining up with the base of the last wheel, and your toes are lining up with the front. So you've got a really nice centered balance. And I personally love a longer frame. You're less nimble if you think of a slalom skater. Slalom skaters are the ones that go through the cones. They do really quick, usually, on one foot, they go really fast through the cones and everything. Shorter wheelbase gives you a lot more maneuverability, like that slalom skater. A longer wheelbase will give you more stability. Harder to turn, but a lot harder to slip out. Smaller wheelbase, you're going to slip out a little bit more because it's much lower, much shorter underneath your foot. Especially if you have a big foot, size 10 and above, 28.5 centimeters and above, you're going to want something that's like 270 millimeter. 260 is okay, but I usually prefer 270. I feel like that's the sweet spot for me. If you wanted to ride bigger wheels then, so what would you do? If you had a 100 millimeter wheel, 4 by 100 millimeter wheels, that means that this frame length would get even longer, right? Not a problem. You can skate 4 by 100, you could skate 4 by 110, you could skate 4 by 125, but you do start getting a really long frame, which can be even more difficult to turn. If a frame is completely flat, the wheelbase is completely flat, so each of the wheels touches at the exact same point, you're going to have a very long wheelbase, which means that turning around is going to be really difficult. In addition, if you're doing crossovers, which is when you're skating and you're going around a turn and you pick up one foot and you go to the other and you take the other foot and go to the other, you're going to have a longer extension. The wheel is going to extend further in the back end and in the front, which means that you are more likely to clip your wheels. If you're doing fast crossovers, you're going to clip your wheels more often. I clip my wheels a lot when I'm skating 4 by 100. I have that background in hockey, so especially when I'm skating backwards, I do really fast, tight crossovers because my hockey skates are very short, and when I don't think about it, I clip my wheels and I end up on my back. And that is another reason to wear your helmet. But you can get away from that by having a slightly shorter wheelbase. So this is 4 by 90. You can also go with 3 by 110. Now let me see what's a good 3 by 110 to pull down. Let's get these. This is a fairly long wheelbase. This is the endless frame. It is designed for 3 by 110 as well as 4 by 90. So you will see that there are additional holes in this frame. You can pop off these 110 millimeter wheels and put on 90 millimeter wheels instead. That will give you this setup, if you prefer, which gives you a little bit more maneuverability, little lower, a little more stability. These wheels are 110 millimeters, they're pretty tall, so you'll have to sacrifice that lower center of gravity, but you get a much longer coast when you're getting to a top speed. You don't have to stride as much because these wheels can store more of the energy and go faster. So this is a 110 setup, and this is a really great length for me. 270 from the first to the back, really good wheelbase. Now, if you look, the wheels, these are the same wheelbase as that 4 by 90 frame, but the wheels definitely stick out further in the front and in the back. They stick out a good 10 millimeters because these are 90 millimeters, same wheelbase. 90 millimeters, 110 millimeters, so there's 10 millimeters difference on each side, which means that they're going to stick out 10 millimeters more, which means that there is 10 millimeters of wheel sticking out that you're going to clip your feet on. When I skate these and do crossovers, I have to be mindful. Not super mindful, it's not super long, but I have to be mindful. And the reason is I don't want to clip my wheels. When you are a speed skater and you're skating for long distance, you want a long wheelbase. That's an exception. I do have these just as an example, won't dwell too long on them, but these are some Powerslide swells. These are extremely long wheelbase, and the reason why they're long is because these will go at really, really high top speed and you want stability. You want to make sure that you don't get any wiggle, you don't get the jitters when you're skating downhill, when you're skating, 50, 60 miles an hour, which is what some people do on these skates, not me, but some people do on these skates. You want a long base so that you can really coast, you can lean into that stride, and you have a good stability at top speeds. This is 3x125, so it's a really big skate. Anyway, so if you are buying a new pair of skates, again, if you are fairly experienced, big wheels is a lot of fun. I would go with 4x90 if you were planning on skating around town. If you want to skate really fast, bigger wheels, 3x110 is probably as big as I would go. 3x125 is fine. 3x110 I think is the perfect balance between the height and the speed that you're going to get. As far as shells are concerned, you can get a plastic shell, you can get a soft boot shell. There's a few different shells out there. Most people, if they're skating at a higher level, are going to get carbon boots. Very expensive. You don't need to do anything like that. If you're looking around the $250, $300 mark, you don't want to spend your money on a carbon boot. You probably couldn't afford it anyway, and you're going to waste your money. You're not going to need it. Most of the skates that I prefer are a plastic shell like that FR one that I was showing you. Plastic shell is just really good support. I love having a nice supportive boot. They do make the cloth boots, again, like this Swell from Power Slide. You can get a cloth boot and then the sides are supportive, but the top is more of a knit material. It's going to be a different experience. If you have the option to try them on, definitely try them on and see which one feels right. But you really can't go wrong with a plastic shell. It's a tried and true design, an internal liner that you can pull out. You can switch around, you can replace if you wear it out. That's probably the way that most people would go if they're getting their first pair of proper skates. And it's definitely the way that I would recommend. Something to consider is the mounting standard. I know this is getting a little in the weeds if you're new to it. If you're fairly old hat around skating and you've skated for a while and you've got some skates but you never really considered it, there are ways that you can replace the frames on your skates. This never was really a thing back in the days. You would kind of just skate the frames that came with your skates. But there are different mounting standards that skates follow. And as a result, there are different frame companies that are compatible with boots that follow that standard. So for the big wheels, we're really just talking about 165 and Trinity. Those are the two big standards out there. 165, let's find a good 165. Again with the FR1. 165 is what most skates use. So the distance between that uses a 2-bolt mounting system. The distance between the back bolt and the front bolt is 165 millimeters. And that's where the 165 comes from. The other option is the Trinity mount. Trinity is a standard that Power Slide has created. There are benefits to Trinity. The nice thing about Trinity, I actually have one that is off that you can see how it mounts. So this is a boot without a frame on it, and you can see this mounting pattern already. Trinity being 3 different mounting points, 1, 2, 3. The nice thing about Trinity, first of all, you've got 2 bolts in the front. That's the main difference. This gives you a little bit more support when you're striding, instead of having that middle point being that bracing area for your frame and that pivot point for the frame. Now you've got it outside of where the wheels are. So when you're pushing, instead of pushing right where that bolt is, you've got a little bit more support outside. Should give you a little bit more responsiveness when you're striding, a little bit more support when you're pushing really deep on a stride. It was designed mostly for speed skating because they knew that speed skaters were really pushing hard on their strides. You know, they're the skaters with the big legs that are just pushing down and getting every little, amount of push that they can get. So the more that they can push that mounting area outside of that line, the better. The other great thing about Trinity is that the wheels, because the mount is on the sides, the wheels can go right in the middle channel, which gives them a much lower ride height for some of the configurations. 3x110, 4x90, both of those can actually go up inside the boot. So you've got the mounting area where your foot goes, and then you've got this little hole area that they can push the wheels up inside, which means lower ride height, much more stability when you're skating at a top speed. Really great design, really great standard. For most of us, it doesn't matter at all. The only thing to consider is which skates fit great and then which skates have the configuration that you like. For me, when I'm looking at frames, I want to get a frame that's a right length. You want to make sure that you don't have a frame that's too short, and then you find a boot that's proper. The mounting really is less important at the level that I'm at for big wheels for recreational skating or fitness skating. 165 is probably the way that I would go. There are more options out there for frames, so if you wanted to switch with the 4x80s that you've got, and maybe you graduate to a 3x110 mount because you want to go skate a little bit faster, you're feeling more confident in yourself, or a 4x90, there are plenty of options out there for 165 mounts now that you can find an aftermarket frame that will fit your skates. Less so with Trinity, as Trinity is more of a power slide brand standard. They have plenty of frames out though. Power Slide does make a bunch of different frames and a bunch of different lengths and materials. So you should look into it, but I wouldn't use that as your reason to buy one or the other. The final thing, so that's if you are a recreational skater and you want to skate. If you're an aggressive skater, so maybe you're already skating and you have an aggressive boot and you want to go out there and skate. One thing that you can do is, aggressive skates use the UFS standard, which is, find a boot, here we go. So aggressive skaters, this is what an aggressive skate looks like without the boot, without the frame on it. The bottom of an aggressive boot is flat. So it is a UFS mounting standard. It's similar to 165. It is 167 from 1 to 2, from the front and the back. It is the UFS standard, Universal Frame System standard. And what's nice about that is for aggressive skaters, when we have sole plates for doing grinds, the frames are completely flat as well. So any UFS frame can line up with those bolts. You use 2 M6 bolts in the front and the back, and you can mount this frame directly onto the boot. And as a result, there are dozens of different frame options for aggressive skaters. That's never been a problem with UFS. As soon as the UFS standard came out, there were frame companies available that popped up that were providing aftermarket frames. So once you wore through these frames, or if you wanted to upgrade these frames that came with your skates and put on a different frame, you could definitely do that. Now, interestingly, the UFS standard was developed by a company called Solomon. And Solomon was not just an aggressive skate company. They were an overall skate company. They were a ski company primarily. So they saw the market of rollerblading as not just one discipline, but all different disciplines, and they could really bring their manufacturing and design expertise and make a big impact. And they're some of the most well-respected skates, even though they haven't made skates in 20 years. Most well-respected skates on the market. 20 years, 15 years. So the Solomon standard, they came out with the UFS, and they worked with the industry on this standard, but they did a lot of the heavy lifting to design UFS. And not only did they use UFS for their aggressive line, they also used UFS for a lot of their recreational line and their fitness line. And one of their frames was this high-low frame. So this is a Solomon UFS frame. It says limited edition. I don't know how limited. It is 247, so 247 millimeters from 1 to 4. It uses 84 millimeter wheels, I think 80 millimeter wheels in the back, and 76 millimeter wheels in the front. So it rides 4 wheels, but they're different size wheels. It is UFS, so 167 millimeters. It mounts directly onto whatever UFS boot you've got, as you can see. And then you can put, your frame bolts in there and you can ride big wheels, 80 millimeter and 76 millimeter. Now, why would somebody want to do that? Well, an aggressive skater probably already has a boot. They have a boot that they like. They know that the liners fit them. They know that the boot is broken in, and it feels really good when they go out skate because they're still skating it. If they didn't feel good, they would have gotten rid of the boots a long time ago. So instead of continuing to use those for an aggressive boot and going out and spending $250 to $300 on a big wheel setup for fitness, why not just get yourself a pair of UFS frames? Put those UFS frames right on your aggressive skates and go out and skate big wheels. And then when you're done, you take the UFS frames off for big wheels and you put on UFS frames for aggressive skating. Makes a lot of sense. And companies have followed suit. There's been a lot of UFS big wheel frames in the past. These Solomons definitely set the industry in the right direction. K2 also makes their UFS their boots UFS, and they have replaceable UFS frames as well. Rollerblade made a pair. These were the Rollerblade Fusions. These are a 4x80, 84 millimeter, 4x84, which is a fairly rare size. You don't see a lot of 84 millimeter wheels out there. But this was another UFS frame that, again, this boot that was made last year, these frames that were made probably 15 years ago, fits perfectly on. All you need to do is mount them in with the UFS bolts, M6 bolts, 167 apart, and you've got a nice big wheel setup on your aggressive skates. One of the most memorable ones to me was Powerslide's Aero frames. This was a really interesting frame. This is, again, UFS, but it was a 4x80, 243, so it's a very short wheelbase. Compared this with the 273 4x90 that I skate. So this being the 4x90, this being 4x80, much shorter. And for me, somebody with a fairly large foot, size 10.5 foot, this is so short, it feels like I'm really, the middle of my foot is just slipping around a lot. But interestingly, these came with little plastic grinders. So not only were you skating big wheels, 80 millimeter wheels, on aggressive skates designed for tricks and grinds and rails and things like that, but you had a little plastic slider. So if you jumped on and you did a few grinds, you wouldn't damage the metal. It would slide nicely because these sliders were nice and fast plastic. Really, really cool idea. Very heavy though. Don't recommend them. Some contemporary frames. So nowadays we're seeing a lot of frames that people can get for UFS. My company, Compass, came out with a frame that is a plastic 80 millimeter frame and 72 millimeter frame. They are 260 millimeters. They are a plastic frame, still UFS, so you can put them on any UFS boot and it will line right up. And that's what it looks like. So if you wanted to go out and skate big wheels and then pop them off and put an aggressive frame on there, UFS makes that easy. And it's a great way for people to try out big wheels without spending a ton of money. You can just get these frames or get any of the UFS frames and just go out there and skate, not have to worry about spending a lot for brand new boots, not have to worry about breaking them in because your skates are already broken in. All you're doing is replacing the frames, making them bigger wheels. Going up a little bit in size, the Kaiser Element 90s. These are really great 90 millimeter frames. They are aluminum, probably my favorite 90 millimeter frames for UFS. It is a 273 millimeter base, so 90 millimeters, about as short as you can get, but with my foot, this is a really great base for it. It also features a 1mm rocker. So we haven't talked a little bit about rockers yet. Usually the frames have the wheels that are perfectly flat. So when you're skating, each wheel touches the ground at the exact same amount of pressure. In this case, it has a 1mm rocker, which means these two middle wheels are actually going to touch the ground first. It's a rocker, just like a rocking chair. So the middle wheels are going to touch first, which means that when you're skating, you'll have a little bit of a shorter wheelbase, effective shorter wheelbase, which lets you turn a little bit faster, do more of a slalomy sort of thing. Really love skating with this. It takes me a little bit of adjustment, to be completely honest, because I'm used to a more flat ride. When I get on these, I'm like, whoa, 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 like it starts to get a little squirrely. But then you get used to it and it feels so good. It's so much more free, going around turns, doing deep carves, skating backwards when you have a slight rocker in you. And then finally, there are some big wheels out there. This is the Ground Control 3x110. I skated the heck out of these. These wheels are very worn. These are actually 100mm wheels that I put on there because this initial version of the 110 was designed for a very specific boot that I don't skate anymore, so I was skating 3x100. But there are ways that you can skate really, really big wheels, 3x110s, 3x125s. Ground Control makes a few frames. There's a frame company called Wish, Wish, that makes a frame that does 3x110. I believe they do a 3x110, maybe 3x125 as well. So there are different options out there with UFS. My only recommendation, if you start to see these frames as something that you really like, you should really look into getting a dedicated boot that can support really big wheels. Anything over 90mm, I feel like that's a lot of height to put on those aggressive boots. You need something that's a little bit more responsive, a little bit lighter boot that isn't designed for grinds, boot that isn't designed to jump off roofs and things like that. You want something that's designed for skating and support. And that's where you get the FR, you get the Flying Eagle, you get the Rollerblade. Something that has a ratchet buckle, something like a Power Slide Next or things like that. Dedicated skates for anything 110mm or above. UFS is quite all right for anything 90 and below, though, in my opinion. I hope that gave you some ideas about other ways that you can skate. If you are trying to look for your first pair of skates, your first pair of real skates, you got some cheap skates or some used skates and you fell in love with skating, you definitely don't need to spend a ton of money. Few things to remember. Try to stay, as you're learning how to skate, try to stay around the 72 to 80mm wheel range. You don't want to get any taller. You want to stay pretty low so that you can get your confidence in skating. Most of us grew up skating with that size. The big wheels weren't a thing until fairly recently. So you're not missing anything getting smaller wheels. They are a lot of fun. I always recommend that people stick with a plastic shell. Plastic shells are going to get a little bit more support. Ankle injuries are a huge problem. I don't want anybody hurting themselves, so definitely recommend getting an internal liner with a plastic shell. That's the way that I would usually go. There are two mounting standards, 165 and Trinity. Really doesn't matter which one you pick. 165 might have more options with aftermarket frames. Trinity might have a little bit more performant, but you might not be at that level where you really care. And then ultimately, if you are an aggressive skater and you already have skates and you have UFS skates, there are plenty of great options out there for aftermarket frames. All you have to do is pop off your aggressive frames, put on some big wheels. Don't go any bigger than 90mm though, because your skates are not really designed for that and they're going to be really sluggish and they're going to feel horrible. Hope that helped. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Please let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. All right. I think that was good. I hope that I got everything in that I wanted to speak about. Hope that I answered some questions. I try to do that talk every couple of years, just because there are people out there who haven't seen the video, and I like to clip that out and update it so that people know the later technology, the latest and greatest stuff. You know, if I made this a couple years ago, there weren't a lot of 165 mount options, you know. Each of the skate companies might have their own proprietary skates, but Endless wasn't around, NN wasn't around, Rocca wasn't around. None of those guys that make aftermarket 165 frames, they weren't really a thing until, you know, 2000 or 2020 or so, which is fascinating to me that this industry has blown up, and you know, they probably sell more frames than UFS guys do because there's more skaters out there with 165 mounts, and the amount of experimentation that we've had with 165 is really, really interesting to me. Anywho, I hope that was interesting to you. I'm going to get back to the questions, get a little bit of water, and then get out of here. Endless, hey, picking you right back up, I think you would be the 43.5, 44.5 shell in the FR1, shell size 10. Unfortunately, you were at the bottom of the range. You might want to try out the Twister XT instead. You know what? I might get the Twisters then. If you recommend it, I'll give it a shot, especially as I'm going to skate these more often. I want to be able to skate big wheels. So today I just took, you know, I got home from work, and I just skated them around my neighborhood. And that's the sort of thing that I love to do. And big wheels like this, there's nothing better. My whole talk about UFS and big wheels with UFS, that project, the Compass frames. This project was spawned because during the pandemic, I wanted to skate with my kids. And a lot of people wanted to skate with their kids, but they only had aggressive skates. And what are you going to do? Go out and skate anti-rocker down your street? Like, that's a horrible feeling. So why not get yourself some frames? Don't spend a ton of money. Pop off the frames, put on these big wheel frames, and go out there and skate. That's what I love to do. I have the means to have a dedicated skate, and I want to get that skate that I can leave at home and just pop on and go out and skate whenever I feel like it. And that's something that I think, as you recommended, maybe the Twister might be the thing. I'll send you a message after, and we'll figure out my size. I'm glad you're here. You should tune in more often. Spend all my money. JK1203, thanks back to Blaney for your skate talks. Always look forward to tuning in. Well, thank you so much for joining. I feel like there are a lot of geeks out there like me who love nerdy stuff about skates, and it's hard to find that community. So if that is you, I appreciate you. You are family. If you're ever in Durham, North Carolina, please reach out, come on by, let's geek out for a little bit. But I love talking about this stuff, you know. Skating isn't just skating. Skating can be whatever you make of it. And for me, skating has always been about the gear. And I love talking about it. So again, thanks for tuning in. People say tuning in anymore. Do you know what tuning in means? Young kids know what tuning in is when you tuned your television to the right channel. Maybe you didn't. Pablo skates. I had bad heel lift too. The only way I found to fix it was with an extra insole. I needed to raise that heel to push my foot up against the lacing area. Fixed my heel lift using Super Feet Yellow. That is a great idea. I have these Intuition heel pads somewhere. I don't know where they are. I will try those before I give up on these FR1s altogether. If I put those in there and lifted my feet up a little bit, that might fill out that shell a little bit more. The length isn't the problem. It is the amount of space on the vertical and the width that my foot just feels like it's not getting the support that it needs. If there were a little bit more padding underneath, I might be able to make it work. You're brilliant. Let me give that a shot and see if that works. All right, then finally, Endless Twister has individual shell sizes and the fit seems a little offset from the FR1. We'll chat about it outline and figure it out. Thank you so much. Great one to end on. It is 10:45. It's been an hour and 45 minutes. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope that you are doing well out there. I'm always the Debbie Downer, but COVID is coming back. You know, I haven't been masking for a while, but there's that new variant that's hitting people. I've got a few friends right now who are recovering from COVID. I've got coworkers who are recovering from COVID. If you are worried at all about getting sick like I am, or if you are worried about bringing the sickness home, it's probably not a bad idea to start masking again. Now, I haven't started masking. I haven't changed my habits at all. I probably should. I'm starting to consider it, but there's definitely more of that out there. And I don't want anybody to get sick. You know, if you get sick, not only are you stuck at home and you're not able to work and provide for your family, but you can't skate. And it takes a while to recover from it. You know, thankfully this variant seems like, especially if you're vaccinated, it seems like it's a lot better, less impactful, just like how, you know, the initial hits were bad and then it started variants and it started getting more contagious but less severe. Definitely less severe now, but getting sick sucks. Like, I don't care if you have the flu or COVID. Getting sick sucks. I don't want to get sick. So definitely a contagious variant is out there. Should probably start masking if you're in enclosed areas. Try to avoid going to bars, clubs, things like that, where you're going to be around a lot of people with bad air quality. Wear a mask if you have to. Just want to make sure that everybody's safe. As far as me and the future, you know, the skates that I've been working on for the last 3 years, we should have the actual samples here in the next week or so. And my next Gear Talk should be all about the skates. So I'm really excited to share that with you. I hope that you will tune in. If you haven't already, Standard Skates on the Instagram, Standard Skate Co. is our Instagram. Please go out there and check it out. We will be posting more information. If you are watching this, you'll probably really appreciate the work that we've put into making this skate unique. You would think, oh, but every skate's been done before. Well, every skate has been done before, but I feel like we've taken the best parts of every skate that's been done before and we've put it into a single boot that's going to satisfy a lot of people. And I'm very, very excited about it. It's one of those things where I'm skating it now and I don't want to skate anything else. And I haven't had a skate like that before. The only thing comparable was my Adapts, and I was on my Adapts for a long time, for like 3-4 months before I said, you know what, I've got to try something else. My Adapts were my forever skate. And now I feel like I have a plastic version that fits just as good. A little bit cheaper, and for me, it's a really great skate. So anyway, I hope that you will join me. Again, thanks everybody for all the support. If you have questions in the future, please feel free to leave a comment in this video. I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks to our friends over at the Helmet Initiative for our helmet giveaway support. Thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/backtoblading. I hope that you are doing well, and I'll see you again 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Let's say 2 weeks.